Um, my name is Carol Iman, and I'm the Nashua Public Library's Outreach and Marketing Librarian. I have a few announcements to go over before we start. Some upcoming programs. On Sunday, October 17th, Ya Jesse, who's the author of this year's Nashua Reads book, which is Homegoing, will be joining us for a virtual program. Nashua Reads is our One City, One Book program where we try to get everybody in the city to read the same book and talk about it with their friends and their families and their colleagues and their book groups, and then join us for programs on the same theme. So registration for the visit of Ya Jesse just opened yesterday. Sign up now, and I will put a link in the chat tonight to how to sign up. And then next Thursday night, July 22nd, the Friends of the Library are sponsoring a return visit by author Martha Hall Kelly, who wrote Lilac Girls. She's going to talk about her new book, which is called Sunflower Sisters and takes place during the Civil War. Martha will be interviewed by Nashua's former state senator, Melanie Levesque, and I'll put a link in the chat for that too. Some Zoom housekeeping things to go over. Note that all your mics have been muted tonight to reduce background noise. You'll only be able to see video of me and the presenters, and you should be seeing once their opening slide right now, a beautiful picture of the mountains. I suggest going up to the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Should be a view button, and selecting side-by-side speaker view, and that'll probably give you the best view for tonight. Our program is being recorded, and I will send you a link. I will email it to you either tonight or tomorrow once it's ready for viewing. We want to use the Q&A function for questions. So if you move your cursor, usually you move your cursor toward the bottom of the screen, a toolbar will come up and you'll see the Q&A button. For some people, it may be at the top of their screen. So that's where you can enter your questions anytime, whenever you think of them. And Judy Blotchick, who's with us, who's the president of the Friends of the Library, she'll read the questions and they'll be answered later in the program. If you have any problems with your Zoom connection, you might try turning your camera off to use less bandwidth, like if the picture's getting choppy or you're hearing echoes, sometimes that helps. Our program tonight is sponsored by the Friends of the Nashua Public Library. Their volunteers work for thousands of hours every year, and they raise tens of thousands of dollars that go back to the library to fund programs like this one tonight. You can help them out by coming to their pop-up book sales outside on the library plaza. There's two of them coming up, Saturday, August 14th and Saturday, September 18th. Okay, and now to introduce our guests tonight. Mary Johnson is the author of An Unquenchable Thirst, a memoir about her 20 years as a nun with the Sisters of Mother Teresa in Calcutta. Her story is featured in a brand new podcast called The Turning, The Sisters Who Left. Mary has an MFA in creative writing from Goddard College, and she's written for many national publications. She's a humanist celebrant for weddings, funerals, and other rites of passage, and she's currently writing about the brain, the mysteries of consciousness, and the illusion of the self. Dr. Patty Halawa is a transformation guide specializing in integrating psychology, Ayurveda, and yoga to support emotional health and wellness. She offers training and mentoring centered around emotional healing and self-care practices. In addition to her 15-year history as a mental health professional, she holds certifications as a meditation teacher, an Ayurveda wellness counselor, yoga teacher, and yoga health coach. Her research on gratitude has been published in the International Journal of Transpersonal Psychology, the Journal of Humanistic Psychology, and in several books. In addition to her mentoring work with clients and her training services, she serves as adjunct faculty at Sophia University, teaching graduate level courses in transpersonal psychology. So please please join me in welcoming Mary and Patty. And I believe Mary is going to get started first.
Yes, thank you so much, Carol, for inviting us and for sponsoring this event through the Friends of the Library. I'm really excited about navigating the emotional terrain of post-pandemic life because it's hard. It's been so tricky for so many of us, this whole post-pandemic thing, the whole emotional thing. And emotions for me have been hard in so many ways. As you mentioned, I was a nun for 20 years, and the particular group that I belonged to was not big on emotions. We weren't supposed to pay attention to emotions at all. We were kind of supposed to pretend like we didn't have them. That would be kind of ideal. The only thing that mattered for that group were the choices that we made. And, you know, if you felt angry, it didn't matter one way or another because you just should never appear angry. If you felt sad, it didn't matter. You just had to ignore that because a good sister is always cheerful. And I actually lived that way, tried to live that way for 20 years before it became completely untenable. And when I left, I had no idea what to do with these things called emotions, these things I felt, these things that seemed to be so important in my life. And I started, as Carol mentioned, studying about the brain recently, and I've been learning about emotions. And one of the things I did was I took Dr. Patty Halawa's course on Insight Timer called Mastering the Emotions. And of all of the different things I have studied and contemplated and read and listened to, Dr. Halawa's course on Insight Timer was the one I found personally most helpful. And that's why it means so much to me to be able to be here today with her. We've kind of decided to split the presentation into two different parts. The whole thing is about navigating the emotional terrain of post-pandemic life. But my part is going to be, oh, hello, something weird just happened here. There we go. My part is about mapping the emotional terrain. So, you know, if you're trying to navigate in a strange place that you're not familiar with, a map is a really good thing. We need a map. It's nice to have a sense of direction. I don't. I just really don't. I get lost everywhere. I need maps. Maps are really important to me. A GPS system is not going to work well in this particular case, but a map of your emotions could be really helpful. And so that's kind of what I'm doing. Before I jump right in there, Dr. Patty Halawa, do you have anything you'd like to add to the introduction here?
Just that I'm really honored to be here, and thank you so much for the kind words about the course, Mary. That was really lovely. Thank you.
That's the way it is. Yeah.
I'm excited to be here, and Mary invited me to be here, and we've had this opportunity to speak a little bit. And so I'm going to follow up after Mary's presentation where she talks about mapping the emotional terrain. I'll follow up with talking a little bit more about what to do with those emotions once we've found that we have them. There's a lot to that. So we'll be building off of each other and sharing. And do please, if you have questions, do put those out there. We'll be carving out specific space to address those. And then we're going to go into a guided practice to help experience what some of that might look like, and then leave a little bit of room for closing thoughts and discussions. So as you have questions, do make note, because we really want to make sure that your voices are heard and that your questions are addressed. So thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mary.
Very important. Thank you so much, Patty. So we're kind of getting close to home in this particular slide. As you can tell, this is an old-fashioned map of Nashua. But we're going to get a lot closer. But first, because we're going to go inside. But first, we're going to get a lot bigger, okay? And we're going to look at what's been happening in the world, because our emotions are very much related to what's going on in the world. So as you all know and have experienced, we've been through a lot lately, especially in the past year and a half. The title of our presentation references the pandemic. And that's obviously a huge deal. And we've all experienced that in so many ways. And Patty's going to talk a little bit about specific ways that the pandemic has influenced us and all different sorts of things as she moves into other things as well. But it's not just the pandemic. If it were just the pandemic, that'd be hard enough. But what else? We've had a lot of political turmoil lately. For some of us, it means that there's an election result that we didn't believe was real, that our votes were stolen. Some Americans, I mean, if I felt like my vote was stolen, you could believe that I would be kind of up in arms about it. And some people believe that. For others, it was a different kind of reaction. We have this political turmoil, like, look at what they're doing to the Capitol on January 6th. That's a big deal. We all experienced this historic thing this year while we were having a pandemic. Also a racial reckoning. We had the murder of George Floyd, something that we all saw in horrific detail. And Dr. Halawa, you actually live in Minnesota, don't you? So even closer there. We also had the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre. And we've all experienced that in different sorts of ways, that the racial reckoning. On top of that, we have a changing climate. Here in New Hampshire, we've just been experiencing a summer unlike any I can remember lately. It hasn't been exceedingly hot. Rather, we had both a Memorial Day weekend and a 4th of July weekend that were so cold you didn't even want to go outside. And it just kept raining and raining and raining. And we're having a thunderstorm right now. I hope we retain power throughout our entire presentation. That would be nice. But everybody's experiencing that in different ways. Heat, rain, cold, having building collapses. I don't know if that's connected with the climate change or not. But those are things, the pandemic, the political turmoil, the racial reckoning, the changing climate, we've all been experiencing that. And then on top of that, each of us have had our own personal challenges. During this past year, I lost my sister to leukemia. My brother tomorrow is having surgery for lung cancer. Those are big things too. We've had personal challenges in so many ways, whether they're related to those bigger issues or not. And what I'd like to stop and do right now is for each of us to think, what are the big things that have impacted me? Because this discussion needs to be personal if we're going to be talking about emotions. We're going to start with this big thing. We're going to see in the world, what are the things that have really been impacting me? And so I've just launched a poll. And it has there 10 choices of things that you can choose. You can choose as many as you want and just take a couple of minutes to look at the list and click on whichever ones have affected you, whether it's a medical challenge. Maybe you got COVID. Did you lose a loved one in one way or another this past year and a half? Have you had employment challenges, perhaps losing a job, working at home? A financial crisis of one sort or another? Were you not able to go on a vacation? Did you not be able to celebrate your graduation or the graduation of your children? Did you have to postpone a wedding or make it really small? Did isolation and social restrictions really hit home for you? Did you have trouble with your relationships because you were spending a lot of time with the same people? Dealing with racial issues, was that big for you? The political issues, was that big for you? Was it something else? Just take a couple minutes.
Oh, Mary,
Yep.
so excuse me, Judy said she can't see the poll, so I don't know. So I will launch it. Let's see if this works.
Let's try. Let's
Okay.
try this. Can you see that poll? Everybody see the poll now?
Can you?
Sorry.
Yeah, if you want to put in the chat, if you aren't seeing the poll, why don't you write something in the chat? But Judy says she can see it now.
Okay, yeah.
So nobody seems to be complaining.
We have at least one person. There we go. Everybody's getting
Okay, great, great.
excellent. Okay, so we'll just take a few minutes, and as you answer that question, what are the big things that have affected you? Just really pause to consider, it's a big deal that we've been through and that we're still going through all of these different things. Yeah, it's a big deal. And just to let you know, this poll is completely anonymous. I can't tell who is voting for what. Nobody can. We set it up that way so that we don't have any idea who is giving which answers. We just see what the answers are. So I'll just give you 10 more seconds, and then I'm going to close the poll and we'll look at the results. Okay, here we go. So if we look here, we see that of the 20 people who answered this poll, 8 have had medical challenges, 7 have lost a loved one. That's 35% of those of us on this call. 30% of us have had employment challenges. Financial crises have been important for some of us. Nearly everybody has lost a personal opportunity that was important to them in this past year. We all felt that isolation and restricted socialization. The political issues were big for some of us. It's been a big year. It really has. It's been a big year. And because of that big year, it's just not over yet. We say that we're post-pandemic, but really, who knows? We have those variants, including that contagious Delta variant. We're not sure how long immunity from vaccines last. Not enough people have been vaccinated to ensure herd immunity. Globally, most of the world remains unvaccinated. So we're still in that uncertainty. We're not completely past it, even though things are starting to open up. And that creates a lot of uncertainty. All this turmoil and uncertainty is happening on the outside. But there's a lot happening on the inside too. And we said that we're going to be talking with you about emotions. And we need to look and see what's going on the inside. And we're making a map. That's what this part is about. And so first, before we really focus in on emotions, we're just going to look at inner experience. What goes on inside us? If you're having trying to navigate, you need to know if you're in a river or a mountain, if you're on an iceberg, or if you're in the middle of the jungle. It's different terrain. So let's see, what are the kinds of things that happen on the inside? Yeah, big map. Okay. Confusing map, maybe. Lots of stuff actually is going on inside us. This is a map that was created by a Finnish research group, Finnish in the sense that they're in Finland. They researched a lot about emotions and the body. And they kind of chose to divide it up into 5 different categories. We're going to start there in the bottom on the green side where it says cognition. So that's kind of thinking, remembering, memorizing, being aware and conscious of things. Cognition happens inside us. All this other stuff going on outside, and inside we have all these thoughts. And sometimes just dealing with the thoughts that are there can drive us a little bazonkers sometimes. Then you have homeostasis, that golden section in there. That's the way your body is trying to regulate itself, the way your body keeps things going, the sensations you feel to make that happen. You feel thirsty, you feel hungry, you feel hot, you feel cold, you feel your heartbeat. Those are also inner experiences. Homeostasis is kind of all those things that help your body work well. It also includes your senses, your hearing, your seeing. That experience of those things happens inside. Illnesses, that's when homeostasis is having challenges, all right? And you have a toothache, you're coughing, you feel itchy. Those are all inner sensations, okay? Your thoughts, your bodily workings, your pains, your aches, your challenges. And then you have emotions. And this particular map is talking about positive and negative. They kind of chose to divide them that way. It's maybe not how I would have done it, but it is kind of how a lot of us think about emotions. We put them in one category or another. We want to feel good. We don't want to feel bad. It's kind of natural human thing, right? But all those different emotions. I think it's important for us to look at that map and know that all these inner experiences are related. You see those gray lines on that map? They connect the thoughts and the emotions, and the thoughts and the feelings in the body. It's kind of like all happening together, and they're all connected. They happen at the same time. And if we're going to be talking about emotions, Patty is the one who really has, for me, the most practical and useful tips about living with them. The person that I found who really helped me to understand intellectually what emotions are was especially Lisa Feldman Barrett, who lives not far from here. She works at Harvard and at Northeastern, and she runs this enormous lab that's done so much work on emotions and the brain and the body and how it's all connected. And she came up with this theory of constructed emotions. And that's explained especially in her book, How Emotions Are Made. What exactly is an emotion? One of the things that Lisa Feldman Barrett says is the theory of constructed emotion, in contrast to the way we think things usually work. The theory of constructed emotion tells a story that doesn't match your daily life. So it's kind of not intuitive, okay? This theory that she's going to explain, you kind of have to get prepared for not exactly how you thought things were working. Your brain invisibly constructs everything you experience, including emotions. Okay, so back up just a tiny bit. I think a lot of us kind of have the idea that what happens is we encounter a stimulus in the world. Maybe you see a snake and it activates fear inside of you. You know, I get all afraid, and that must be like these brain circuits in the brain that fear always feels the same, or happiness, always people are smiling when they're happy. Stop and think about that. You know, that's not true, because lots of times people are so happy they cry, right? What's that about? It's not that the brain always does the same thing. It's not that our body always reacts in the same way when we have these different emotions. Dr. Barrett talks about the construction of emotions. And to explain that a little bit more, what is an emotion? This is her definition. An emotion is your brain's creation of what your bodily sensations mean in relation to what is going on around you in the world. Okay, in relation to what is going on around you in the world. Your brain's creation of what your bodily sensations mean in relation to what is going on around you in the world. So this definition kind of goes backwards. Okay, first, what happens is the thing in the world, then the bodily sensations, and then your brain's creation. So we're going to look at it in detail in that way. What's going on around you in the world? We already talked a lot about that. Lots of stuff going on around in the world. Lots of stuff. our body and brain respond to what's happening in the world, and we feel physical sensations. Before we talk about emotions, we got to talk about the body. We feel things in our body. The picture of these people holding hands here is another sort of map. It's the map of where you experience emotions in the body. Perhaps it's a tightness in the chest or a burning in the chest. Perhaps it's a feeling nice all over. Or perhaps like that one that's so blue, it's a coldness in the body. You just feel cold and you feel kind of heavy. And maybe you feel something in your groin. Maybe you feel something in your chest is all red. Maybe you're feeling like a excitement in your head. All of those different body maps. Maybe like that last one, you see where you have, it's all red here. It's like, have you ever experienced like all your blood is going to your face? Yeah, we all know that experience. And what I want to do right now is just another little poll. We're going to this time have everybody answer the question, as we've been discussing all this turmoil in the world, which of these sensations have you felt? Maybe it's during our discussion, maybe it's things you felt during the pandemic or when you were dealing with that racial reckoning or the loss of a loved one, just whenever, within the past year, 2 years, any time, have you felt any of these things? Do you recognize, do you remember ever having felt these things? Can you see the poll? You can. All right, so look at the list there and see. Have you felt tightness in the chest or the throat? Have you felt your limbs getting cold, a racing heart, sweaty palms, any of those things? Look at the list there. Think of this bodily sensations you may have had in relation to what's going on in the world. Where do you feel it in your body? Where have you felt it? What have you felt? And we may be more aware of that or less aware of that. Maybe, I know for a long time, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to what my body felt about these things because it didn't make any difference. Nobody was gonna allow me basically to change anything because I had a headache or because I felt cold. It just wasn't gonna enter into it. And so maybe you are very aware of your physical sensations, maybe not so much, but just have a look at this list and just think, have I felt any of these things? Do I know what that feels like? Do I know what that feels like?
So Mary, somebody said that some people are saying they're only able to check one thing off.
Oh, really? Sorry
I
about
guess-
that.
Yeah.
You were supposed to be able to check more than one, but
I will go into the other poll. I'll see if I can make sure that one's right.
thank you, Carol. Yeah. We're all still kind of getting used to these polls, but 21 of you have voted already, and I'm just going to end the poll now and we'll see what everybody's results are. So lots of us have felt tightness in the chest. Lots of us have felt headaches. Some of us have felt tightness in the throat, coldness in the limbs, racing heart. Seems like none of us are doing the sweaty palms or the vibration in the hands things. Maybe we're not aware of how our hands feel so much. For me, that's one place that I noticed right away, but everybody's different. You feel these things in different places, different ways. But I think it's important that we recognize it all kind of starts there in our body. All right. So we're going to stop sharing that particular poll. And we're going to remember all of those things we felt. And we see this picture of where different people are feeling different emotions. And remember that this team in Finland have made these maps. And now we're going to look Oops, come on back. Those are the names. Using our past experience, our brain interprets those sensations and assigns meaning to them. That tightness in the chest, that feeling of not being able to breathe, that can be anxiety. Love is that warm feeling all over. The cold feeling can be a sign of depression. Contempt, you're kind of looking down on others. You got it all up here. I'm looking down at you. I have contempt. I'm proud of what I do. I'm happy. I've accomplished something. I feel good. That's kind of like all up there. Yeah. And then shame, that feeling of that blood going to your face, that embarrassment. There's just some of the ways that those things can appear in your body. But we got to be we're going to have at this point, yes, this is where it happens. This is the other pole, the last one that we're going to be doing. Oops. So we have looked at what's happening in the world. We've looked at what happens in our body. Now I'm going to ask you to put names to the emotions that you have felt. What are the names for the emotions you have felt? And that's this poll we have here. And I think Carol has fixed it so that we can vote for more than one. So have you felt anxiety, grief, anger, frustration, boredom, exhaustion, overwhelm, calm, excitement, something else? Unfortunately, Zoom limits us to 10 choices. I think we could have had, so many different emotions during the pandemic, and I would have put more positive emotions there as well. But it seems to me they're pretty easy to deal with. It's maybe the negative ones, the ones that are a little more challenging, a little more difficult, that we can maybe spend a little more time with. Have you felt any of those things the past year, year and a half? Anxiety, grief, anger, frustration, boredom, exhaustion, overwhelm, calm, excitement, something else. Nearly everybody has voted. So just give you another 3 or 4 seconds. And we're going to close the poll. And we're going to look at what everybody has said. What's number one? Is anybody surprised? Number one is anxiety. Second really strong one is grief. Also frustration, overwhelm. Those things have been so significant during this past year. Also anger, boredom, exhaustion. Also some calm, also some excitement, but anxiety really big. Yeah, 87% of those of us who responded to this poll said we experienced some anxiety this past year, and that's really normal. That's really, really normal. Okay. So those are just, as I said, Zoom limits me to 10 emotions, but there are a whole lot more. There are a whole lot more emotions. And the more names we have for emotions, the better we can relate to them. And you can go online and find all kinds of lists of emotions. This is a particular emotional wheel that was designed specifically for the pandemic. If you go to the very center of it, you can see there are kind of like 6 major categories. Anger, sadness, fear, disgust, joy, and genius are the way this particular map is organized. They're organized in so many different ways, but this one does it this way. And you look at anger. So many of us felt anger. What kind of anger was it? Was it sarcastic, critical, frustrated, protective, mad, aggressive, hateful, threatened, hurt? All of those are kind of shades of anger. And the more we can give a label to it, a more specific label, rather than just saying, I feel good today, I feel bad today. I mean, well, that's a start. But do you feel frustrated or do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel guilty or do you feel disappointed. Get really specific can be a very, very helpful thing to do. But it can be tricky also. It can be very tricky. For example, there we go. Sometimes meaning isn't entirely straightforward. Suppose what your physical sensation is that you feel butterflies in the tummy. Okay, we all know what that means. Okay, something's going on down there. Does it mean that you're hungry or that you're anxious? Maybe those butterflies in the tummy mean you're excited, or maybe it means you're in love. Maybe butterflies in your tummy means you have the flu. We can have the same physical sensations and then interpret them in various ways. And that's one of the powers that we have, actually. As Carol mentioned, I am a humanist celebrant. I work with a lot of couples who are getting married. And very naturally, very normally, within that week before the wedding, they feel these butterflies in the tummy. And one of the things that I say to them is, you're going to feel, these butterflies in the tummy. You're going to feel something that you might want to call anxiety. And you could call it anxiety, and that means you're kind of worried and you're wondering if you're making the right choice, and maybe the wedding is going to be a disaster and who knows what else. But you could call those feelings excitement. I'm about to do something important, something significant, we're going to have a big party. I'm going to be spending the rest of my life with this person that I love. We have that ability to interpret those feelings in our body, and that's what it means to construct those emotions. When your brain assigns a more than physical meaning to your physical sensations, so it's not just a tummy ache, it's not just the flu, your brain has constructed an emotion. It gives that meaning to those physical sensations. Surprise. What does this mean? It means that those emotions get constructed often. We are not aware what our brains are doing. We become aware, okay, yeah, my brain says that's sadness, but maybe I could reinterpret it. Maybe it's not sadness. Maybe it's just, okay, I didn't get enough sleep last night and I'm feeling weird. Who knows? Sometimes then we can reinterpret that emotion consciously. Sometimes our brain interprets our sensations to mean multiple things at once. I'm sure we've all had that experience where we felt sad and happy at the same time. You can feel all sorts of things at once. And it means really that we should never judge our emotions. And that's very countercultural. Where, like, how many times have each one of us said, or somebody has said to you, I shouldn't feel sad. There are so many other people who are suffering more. I shouldn't feel angry. That's, a lady never feels angry or some silly thing like that. And we judge our emotions. We judge ourselves for having various emotions. But please, let me repeat, do not judge your emotions. Acknowledging, accepting, even welcoming your emotions is really helpful, because emotions don't like to be ignored. If they're ignored, sometimes they take charge. They get really bossy because they want you to know that they're there. Emotions are neither good or bad from a moral aspect. They're just how your brain categorizes those sensations you're having in your body in relation to what's going on in the world. You are not your emotions, even though sometimes you feel like that's all that you are. You're these emotions, but your emotions are something different. They're something that are constructed. I lived in Rome for 15 years, so I learned Italian. And one of the beautiful things about Italian is the way they talk about emotions. In Italian, if you're afraid, you say, "Ho paura," which doesn't mean I am afraid. It means I have fear. Just different. It's this kind of level of separation. I am not my emotion, but I have my emotion. I feel my emotion. I'm not my emotion. So that's kind of making a big map of what an emotion is, what we have felt during this past year. And The good news is that knowing that emotions are constructed means you can relate to them with more freedom. The bad news means that the polls took longer than I expected, and I have exceeded my time. But we now get to go on with Dr. Patty Halawa, who will help us navigate that emotional landscape that I've drawn out with too many words.
All right. Hello. Thank you for that beautiful, beautiful intro, Mary, and the really lovely explanation of emotions. I'll walk into my PowerPoint. Here's the welcome. And I saw a little question pop up in the chat about boredom, and I appreciate that question. So if that doesn't get answered, circle back and ask that again during the Q&A, because it's a really important question, because boredom it's significant, right? It really has shown up for a lot of us in the last year. So we're going to talk about navigating this emotional terrain. And part of what I want to highlight is what the terrain actually is. And the terrain that we're navigating right now is more complex than we might really be aware of. There's this subconscious collective energy that we're all carrying. And over the last year, since the onset of the pandemic, and then weaving all those other elements that Mary identified, the racial components, the political components, so many layers of things, there's been a collective energy of unsettledness, and globally. This is the first time in the history of humans that we've had a shared experience like this. No matter where you live on the planet, you've been affected by some, if not all, of these pieces. In addition to the emotions that we experience, we have to digest all of it, the information, the uncertainty, what's happening in our lives and the world around us. We have to take it all in and make sense out of it. And that becomes really challenging on the nervous system. It becomes really challenging on our body and our heart and our whole sense of being. And we add to that the fact that everything's been changing constantly. Like one day, wear a mask, don't wear a mask. You can go here, you can't go here, eat here, no, you can't. So all this information is constantly changing, which is really hard. Our body thrives on a degree of predictability. When there's a degree of predictability, our nervous system is at ease and our emotions are more grounded because we feel safe. When things are changing and unpredictable, we tend to feel a little more on edge because our stress response is activated. And when that happens, we're more prone to experience that unpleasant end of the spectrum of emotions that Mary is referencing. Right? This whole list of the unpleasant, including boredom. The emotional terrain is grounded in this silent undercurrent of uncertainty and unpredictability. Like the undercurrent that's moving through everything is like, things can change any moment. Never know what's going to happen. What's the news going to say today? Is there a new variant? Is there a new disturbance? Is there a new upheaval? There's a part of us that wants to almost push it away and take all these emotions that are coming up, the ungroundedness, the anxiety, the fear, the frustration, the anger, the grief, and just shove it down because we don't like it. Like there's a tendency in us to try to push away from that we don't like. And it's normal. Like we tend to like, I don't want it. So we push it away. The challenge with that is it gets stored in the body and it builds up. These emotions, they move, they shift, and they happen really, really rapidly. The interesting thing is every emotion, it's a really interesting thing. Every emotion by itself, left untended, left to its own trajectory, lasts about 3 to 7 minutes. 3 to 7 minutes is the lifespan of an emotion. That's pretty amazing because we can all survive pretty much anything for 3 to 7 minutes. We forget that though, because when we're in it, we're in the midst of anxiety or fear or even anger. It washes over us and the mind likes to echo this, like it's going to be like this forever. And then we get the ominous music in the background and we just get trapped in it. And then we start having thoughts about it and stories about it. And the body believes everything the mind thinks. And so we start feeling more tension. And then the mind gets more contracted and the stories continue and the emotion persists. When we pause and say, oh, here's this emotion, it's okay, and let ourselves be with it, That actually changes. When we start accepting it and say, it's all right to feel this, when we stop fighting it, things shift. Our inner dialogue shifts. Very often when we're feeling an emotion that's unpleasant or painful, so we can really think of taking all those unpleasant emotions and just give them this beautiful umbrella term of pain. That's really what they are. They're painful. We don't like them. But when we feel it, we might look around and see somebody else and say, oh, they're not feeling this, or they seem okay. What's wrong with me? Why am I feeling like this? And these thoughts create more tension in the body. And then our emotions actually get more tense. They get more pervasive, they get stronger. And it increases that feeling of pain and it leaves us feeling really ungrounded. So what we want to be able to do is play with that a little bit. We can. We are incredibly adaptable. We're actually way better at change and navigating emotions than we give ourselves credit for. Here's the thing. No matter what experience you've been through in your life, pause for a second. You right now have a 100% success rate in surviving discomfort. 100% of the time, you have survived it. Your chances are really, really, really good that the next uncomfortable or painful experience you'll get through. We can change our experiences. We also need to trust that we have that ability. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. It's like, how do we be with these things, this unpleasantness, this pain, in a way that helps us trust and build resilience? There we go. So how we respond to our emotions affects our experiences. The way that we respond to all the feelings that comes through affects not only the emotion itself, but our experience of how we see ourselves, how we show up in our relationships, and how we view the world around us. So the more that we can respond with kindness, with compassion, and with permission to ourselves, with recognition of what we're feeling, we actually shift our ability to, one, tolerate, but also move through. So the first thing we want to do is notice the body. And Mary alluded to this. Like, we just got to notice that we have a body. We forget, like, we spend so much of our time in this world above the neck, like spending all this time in the head, that if we pause and just shift into the body, a whole different experience happens, because the body and the mind are always having a conversation. They're always chatting with one another. And when the mind gets caught in a story or pain, the body responds with tension. It's the stress response, natural, happens for all of us. When we shift and turn into the body and soften the body, we soften the mind. The emotion, the story, it starts to release and moves through. So our first thing is to tune into the body. What's happening? What's happening to the breath? What's happening in the muscles? What's going on in the belly? Is it clenched? Is it swirling? Are you holding your breath? Are you clenching your jaw? These are some of the first telltale signs that the stress response has been activated. So we have the sympathetic nervous system. So I was thinking there's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. So you can think of the sympathetic nervous system as stress, because they both start with S, and the parasympathetic nervous system is the rest and digest system. So I think of it as the peace system that starts with peace. The best way to remember it I can come up with. Sympathetic is stressful, parasympathetic is peaceful. Our invitation when we're feeling the difficult emotions is to recognize the sympathetic response and invite this opposite, just to balance, shift gears, to bring us back to center. And we do that by inviting self-care. I want to be really clear about self-care. When I'm talking about self-care, I'm not talking about like binging on chocolate and Netflix or something, although those are lovely. There's nothing terribly wrong with that, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about self-care. When talking about self-care is this idea of tending to your needs in a way that restores balance in the nervous system, that calms the mind and brings ease to the heart. We do that by acknowledging. We're really acknowledging that we have something happening that's painful. When we do that and we acknowledge with kindness, with compassion, and say, oh, this is happening right now, everything starts to shift. We start to create space for the emotion to be, to exist, and to move through. It brings balance to our whole physiology, and it changes the weight of everything. Soothe the body. This is where we start. So there's some real simple practices. So we want to calm the nervous system. Time with zero input is significantly powerful. If you take just like even 2 minutes and just pause and close your eyes, you're going to notice a difference. You're not taking stuff in. Moving the body helps release tension in the muscles. Even just yawning or moving the jaw will release tension here. Will soften the tongue. And when we do that, we actually soften all the internal muscles that move through our digestive system, and it helps us digest not just our food, but our emotions and experiences as well. Connecting with people, comforting the body. This is surprisingly powerful. Just taking a blanket or a shawl or wrapping it around the shoulders really tightly, placing a blanket on you, like weighted blankets, the sales of those have ramped up in the year, and there's a reason for that. When we cover ourselves, we feel safe. Our nervous system for a second goes, ah, I'm protected. Something really simple like that. Doesn't take much. Very simple practice, just wrapping the self. Finding predictability in routines. The more chaotic the world is out there, the more simplicity and predictability you want to invite into the day-to-day. Part of what has been so challenging in this last year is that a lot of us have, our routines were totally disrupted. Our schedules were shifted, the places we used to go, how we used to connect, all of that changed. And it left us feeling out of our equilibrium. So being able to create some kind of structure, some kind of rhythm, there's ease in the body with that. And it soothes our emotional reactivity, the emotional intensity, because we feel like we can ground into something. Sleep, of course, is critical. Warmth and breath. So I know, just in the interest of time, we're just going to do a short breath practice here just to give you a sense of what this can look like. So I invite you to just pause for a second and close your eyes and just do a quick check-in and name the first emotion that you notice in your body right now. It's the first, just 2 or 3 adjectives that you notice, and go ahead and just make a mental note or even jot them down or type them in the chat. I'm going to invite you to pause and take a really slow breath in through the nose. Hold that breath for just a second. And open the mouth and exhale as slowly as you can. If you can, make a little sound. We'll do that again. Take another gentle breath in through the nose. You might feel your chest expand a little. You're going to pause. Again, open the mouth just a little bit and sigh it out as slowly as you can. One more time, taking a nice, easy breath in. And now see how long you can get that exhale to be. Slow, steady, soft, and long. Gently breathing in through the nose. Pause. And then see how long you can let that exhale be, and softening through the shoulders, even softening the belly. One more just like that. Just gentle breath in. And a really long, steady exhale. And now just allowing the breath to find its own natural rhythm. And noticing what adjectives you might use to describe how you feel in the body and the mind right now. Just notice what's changed. This is a really simple practice. So the extending the exhale, very often when we feel tension or fear, people tell us breathe, breathe. And that actually tends to make us more tense because we'll gasp for breath. But when we're feeling most of these unpleasant emotions, we tend to breathe from the top part of our lungs. And our breath gets very shallow. With anxiety, it's shallow. With anger, it's shallow. When we extend our exhales, that reminds us, that switches from the stress response to the peace response in the body. It starts to shift that direction. It extends the exhale, it empties the lungs, so we naturally take a deeper breath. We get more oxygen into the brain, and our ability to perceive our experience changes and expands as well. So that long exhale, it's the first thing you can do is just extend your exhale anytime. Extend your exhale. Always focus on exhale. My 15 years as a therapist, that's probably the one thing I said more than any other thing was exhale. Because when we're feeling those things, we hold our breath. It creates more tension. It locks that painful emotion in place. When we come to the body and extend the exhale, we invite the body to soften. We invite the emotion to move through. The word emotion means to move. Emotions are meant to move. When the body's soft, the emotions can move. So I'm going to talk about gatekeeping for a second. Mary mentioned the body, and she had a beautiful slide of all the different ways that sensations can get filled and all the different ways that the body responds to or cultivates emotion. And we don't always realize how subtle that is, our experience with the environment. So what we're taking in with our eyes, our ears, our physical sense with the skin, and what we're smelling and tasting, all of that affects our emotional state and our emotional quality. In the last year, we have maybe had too much stimulation or perhaps not enough. But what has been true without a doubt for I think the majority of the people, at least in the US, is that our intake of visual media, of screens, has amplified significantly. Everything we're seeing has been two-dimensional. We're getting all this input and it strains the nervous system as well. You can think of all your sense organs as gatekeepers. So tuning into, oh, how am I feeling when I watch more TV? What's happening when I'm taking in the news visually with my ears? What am I smelling? Am I just sitting in the house all day? Or am I going outside and experiencing fresh air? Or am I smelling smoke? When the George Floyd riots were happening, it was all helicopters and smoke. It was a lot of sensory input that added strain to the body. So what we can invite in is something that's opposite. If we're getting a lot of loudness, how can we invite silence? If we're getting a lot of excessive stimulation, can we invite something grounding? So we just start tuning in. These are the gateways to our emotions. That's what we're taking in and feeding our emotional experiences and our interpretations of the world. Once we're aware of that, we can set boundaries. Setting boundaries is really critical. And it might just be choosing your meals, choosing when you're taking in your media. Like it's okay to be informed, but maybe not right before bed. Maybe you don't watch the news right before bed because it will feed that. It will feed the anxiety. It will feed the quality of your sleep. What are you getting in your social media feeds? Is that something you want to limit? What are the conversations you're having? Are they supportive? Are they encouraging? Are they nurturing? So tuning in and just setting boundaries, like this is where I get to say no, this is where I get to close the door. So the more we can tune into what we're taking in and how our body's responding, the more we can set a limit that honors what our body is needing. Now, self-massage, I'm going to talk about this for a second. We'll actually do just a brief moment of this because this is one of the single most powerful practices that you can do for anxiety, for sadness and depression, and also for anger and self-compassion. This is really a universal practice. It soothes the entire nervous system. It brings us into the present and takes us out of our fear of the future and our thoughts about the past, where we can often get stuck that feeds a lot of the painful emotions. It reminds us that we can soothe ourselves. It releases tension in the musculature, again, allows the emotions to flow. It nourishes us and it stimulates the lymph, which helps our body detoxify. So there's nothing bad about that. So with self-massage, this can be really simple. This doesn't have to be huge. I'm just going to invite you to take a moment and place one hand on top of your shoulder and just apply a real gentle pressure and then just gently sweep down. And you might even squeeze a little bit as you go down. Just press and squeeze just a little bit. You might do that to the other side. And just notice how that feels in the arm. You might even go to the neck. And just invite a soft massage into the neck. And we'll do this in our guided practice. We'll do a little bit more with this. Just noticing that there's a lot of healing power in your own hands. And one of the things that we miss and have missed very much in this last year, some more than others, is the experience of touch. We're social beings. We need touch, we need connection, and we often forget that we can actually offer that to ourselves. There's a lot of healing power in this. So even just noticing, I had a teacher once tell me, like, if you feel pain in your body, put your hand there. If you feel pain in your body, put your hand there. This applies for emotional pain too. If you feel pain in your heart, place your hand there. It brings our breath there. It brings our attention there. If you feel that in your belly, hold your belly. If you feel it in the back of your head, if you have the headache, wherever it shows up, place your hand there and apply just a little bit of pressure. It doesn't have to be big, but just a little bit, just that says, emotion, I see you, I hear you, I know you're here. This is powerful medicine. This doesn't seem like a big deal, but this is really a powerful, powerful practice. Which brings us into meditation. It's just that idea of being present. I'm not going to talk a lot about meditation because I know meditation's gotten a lot of info in the last several years, but what we're really doing with meditation is not striving to relax, but to get to know ourselves. So when we sit in meditation, first thing that happens is you become really aware of all the thoughts that are in your head. There's usually about 65,000 thoughts in a day for the average person. It's a lot of thinking. So when we sit down to meditate, sometimes it's the first time we're quiet and really aware of them, and they all come in like fireworks, and it can be really overwhelming. So what we want to do is just notice them and go, oh, there's a lot of thinking there, and start noticing what those thoughts are. And just tune in and become more aware of them, because once we're aware of them, we can start to change the dialogue. We can start to respond to them with kindness. We can start to say, oh, instead of judging our thoughts or judging ourselves as bad or shameful for having such thoughts, we can go, oh, there's that thought again, there's that pattern, which invites us to have permission. We always want to invite space to feel. Like you get to feel whatever you feel. You cannot feel wrongly. Like you can't be, your feelings aren't ever incorrect. It's really important information about your experience and your relationship with whatever's happening around you. It's how our body speaks. It's the language of the body. And so we get to give ourselves permission, like, hey, I feel you, anger. Yeah, it's okay. You can feel angry. You can feel sad. You can feel bored. You can feel tears. Tears are amazing. It's one of the few ways that the body has to release. Welcome them every single time. Write in a journal. Give yourself permission, because every emotion is valid. If you're feeling it, it's valid. The challenge is not the emotion, it's our response to the emotion. So what we want to do is invite compassion. And compassion is not feeling sorry for yourself. I want to be really clear about that. Self-compassion, the compassion is, the term itself means to suffer with. So all we're doing when we're practicing self-compassion is acknowledging to ourselves that we're experiencing a moment of suffering. Like, oh, this is real. And then there's the secondary element, which is this call to action to relieve the suffering. So self-compassion has nothing to do with sympathy or feeling sorry for yourself. Instead, it's acknowledging a very real pain, acknowledging that you're not alone in it, because as we know, emotions are human. Every human on the planet has felt what you're feeling. The context or the story might be different, but the emotion has been felt by others. You are not alone, which then gives you permission to feel kind. Because if you saw someone, a human, someone that you cared about suffering, our natural inclination is to move toward them and say, I see you. You're not alone. I'm here for you. We get to practice doing that for ourselves. And that's what we're going to do in our guided practice shortly. There's an app too, and Mary had mentioned Insight Timer. The only reason I mention this is because for meditation, for self-compassion, even for just resources, this is an amazing app. And the practice that we're going to do shortly, I have a version of it on this app as well. So it's there. And if you don't like my practice, that's okay. There's over 100,000 practices on this app. You'll find someone that you like that can speak to you, and most of this is free. The meditations are all free. The courses are paid, but the meditations, it's a great resource. But if you like what we practiced today, I invite you to come and check out, you just search for Patty Halawa PhD, you'll find these, but there are some meditations, including the self-compassion practice that we're going to do. So I do invite you to check that out. And if you don't like apps and don't want to use them, that's okay too. You can just practice checking in with yourself. And it's a real simple practice. So we're going to do this for a second. So I'll invite you to just pause. Place one hand at the heart, right at the breastbone, and one at the belly. Just take a breath in. Gently exhale, and you might ask yourself, oh, what am I feeling right now? What's my body feel like? Just checking in with the head and the shoulders. Again, thinking adjectives. Like, what words would you use to describe how your body's feeling? Is there tension? Is there ease? Is there fatigue? Just notice. What emotions are here in the heart? And just notice. And then asking, what is the quality of the thoughts that are moving through my mind? Not the content, the quality. Are they racing? Are they slow? Are they cloudy? Are they sharp? Are they fearful? Just want to describe them rather than getting caught in the exact narrative, but just what is the quality? And then inviting that long exhale. Ah, this is what's present with me right now. Okay. And you might even say, it's okay that this is here. It's okay that this is here. I invite you now to just take a nice steady breath in and open the mouth with a nice big exhale. Shake out the arms for a second. Just coming back to our shared space. This idea of just checking in with yourself and naming, again, what's going on in the body, what emotions are present, what is the quality of the thoughts. And this brings us back to center. It takes us out of the intensity of the emotion and brings us into a place where we have the opportunity to respond. When we respond to our emotions in a way that is kind, that is compassionate, that is accepting, we don't hold on to that emotion. It doesn't stockpile with other emotions that have not been digested. We actually digest and move through the whole experience. So the practice is, the practice of navigating our emotions is to be gentle. It's really simply to be very gentle with yourself and acknowledge that whatever you're feeling is what you're feeling, and it's okay. Like, that's paramount. And then from there, nourish yourself physically, emotionally, spiritually. What do you need to fill your heart to feel grounded? From there, you have a bigger reserve to respond to these emotions. Exhale often, reach out. Know that it's okay. You can't feel wrong. So you can't feel incorrectly. And know that you're loved by others and by yourself. You get to start practicing that, and that's what helps us through. So we're going to go and leave some space for questions now. I just want to make sure we're doing okay on time. We've actually gone a little over. So we're going to do questions very briefly and then go into an actual guided practice. So what questions do we have so far?
We only have a couple.
Oh, great.
So the first one is, well, there's one that's easiest. Let's do that one quickly. Deborah would like to know from Mary, is there a way that we can get a copy of that sort of feeling and all of the map that linked everything, whether you were hot and if you were angry and all of that? They wondered if they could get it to be larger so they could read it. And so I wondered if that could be added as a handout.
Yes, I'll add that. I don't have that currently as a handout, but Carol is going to have links to everyone when she sends out the link to the recording. We'll have some handouts, and I can add that one in as well.
Okay,
Yes.
so that one's simple. I have one, and then I'm going to go to one because it's kind of long. My question is, or comment, I find it helps me tremendously if I do something creative,
Mhm.
whether it's baking or last night I actually made a wreath. It just felt so good. I felt like my emotions were, it was just calmer. It just felt so good. Do you recommend that too as part of this?
Well, of course. Whenever we feel so here's the piece. When we feel an unpleasant emotion, the first thing we want to do is tune in with it and name it, give it permission to exist. And then we get to engage in a practice, whatever that may be, that's going to invite us to feel more aligned with how we want to feel. So we get to choose, like if I'm feeling anxious, can I do something that feels grounding? If I feel really restless, can I do something that feels soothing? So baking, cooking, creating, it takes energy and it moves energy out instead of us taking all this stuff in. There's something really beautiful in that. So creativity is wonderful. We get to play with what is it that I'm feeling called to do. So if we can name the emotion and then what feels like the natural movement or expression of that emotion. Could be baking, it could be painting, could be coloring, could be going for a walk. Um, Anything that's going to help that move and help redirect, not distract away from, but redirect the story.
Great. So here is the long question. It's from Kath Noble. She says, I am 75. Last November, my best friend died suddenly from a brain aneurysm. We had been close friends since we joined the convent together and later after we left. She was at both my weddings. In fact, she presided at my most recent one 12 years ago. So obviously, we're sorry for your loss, Kath. It seems like you lost your person. Now, the only people close to me who knew me when are my two remaining brothers, three others who died, and a few school friends that I see every few years. With the pandemic, my husband and I were very isolated. Terry's death just made it worse. Am I too old to make new best friends? Or do I accept that I won't have one anymore? At least not like her. My wine and women group are the best friends I have now, and they are wonderful. We live near each other most of the year.
Thank you so much for that share. Um, there's so much there. And my first thought, and then I'd love to hear from Mary as well, but my first thought is like, no, you're not too old at all. No. Like, you're never too old to find relationship. And at the same time, there's space to grieve that relationship, those relationships won't be the same. So there's the very valid grief here, but there's also, can we be open to possibility of new relationships that will be different, but also of value, and celebrate the wine group that you have. These women, they're wonderful. Celebrate the relationship with your husband. Celebrate those that are there and stay open to the possibility and honor the grief that's also very, very real. Mary.
Yeah, I would say, again, just kind of building on what Patty has said, thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for being so aware of what's going on in your life, which is what we were talking about so much in the beginning. You're being aware really of where are the places that have impacted me so significantly? What are my specific challenges? Because that is the first step. You're never too old. Patty's right. It does get different. I can tell you that it very definitely does get different, but you'll find new ways, new places to find your friends and celebrate those you have. Patty covered it pretty much. I would just emphasize that you're really on your way, just with that awareness, and then just to remain open. Because I was thinking also in terms of navigating emotional terrain, and I'm thinking, sometimes we have a goal, and we need to find on the map exactly where that goal is, and we're going to get there. And that's one kind of, how to navigate. And then there's another kind of navigation that you do sometimes when you're on vacation. You're in a place you've never been before, you don't know anything, and you just explore. And there is no goal. And I think you may be in a situation like that, where the familiar things aren't there anymore. And you don't, maybe you have kind of a goal of, I'd like to connect with some new people, but you don't know who they are. You don't know where you're going to find them. You can't make a beeline from there. You can't draw it on the map and say, this is what I'm going to do. But you can be open, you can explore, you can look around, you can see if anything's here, just the way you would on a vacation in a strange place. Just go with that attitude of whatever happens, happens, and just watch and be amazed at what comes your way.
There's one comment in the chat that I wanted to bring back up, and it was from Kathleen O'Brien Lawrence. And she says, how does one reprogram boredom, which is very prevalent in this time of less socialization?
I
One Patty
love
wanted to address.
Oh, I love that question. I really do, because boredom is like every emotion has a message to carry. And boredom is a really interesting one because it sometimes it has a couple different interpretations. And one of them can be a numbing. Like it can simply be like there's too much and we shut down and we just can't take in anymore. So sometimes the response to boredom is saying, well, what is this boredom really telling me? To actually like examine it, to study it, to get really, really curious about it. It's this idea of like, what is boredom right now? What does it feel like in my body? Where is it showing up? What is the story that I'm telling myself? Am I seeking stimulation? Or or is there something that I'm trying to avoid feeling? That if I open that up, it's going to be too much. Like we get numb, we turn things off. So being with boredom, there's this piece of one, examining, and then two, just gently inviting. Like what is something that just starts to tune into the senses? It starts to create a sense of aliveness, and we just name it. Like, oh, that's there. Instead of trying to go backwards in time to say like I want to feel like I did then, to today, what feels a little bit alive? Is it the smell of something? Is it, like, oh, this tea actually is like really lovely. Can I just be with that and find a moment of joy and comfort? So it's through these little micro moments of acknowledgement, of acceptance, of gratitude, of shifting that gear. But the first is really noticing it, naming it, and getting curious about what it's actually telling you. And we can do that with any emotion. Very often, even anxiety can be disguised as boredom. Depression can often be disguised as boredom. So we want to examine it. Like, what is it really telling me? What is it wanting me to numb away from? What is it tuning out? What am I losing interest in? Is this about fatigue? Is my body exhausted and can't do anymore? Sometimes that's a message as well. So there's this piece of what is the boredom first, and then building from there.
The one thing that I might add to that is that there was a study whereby it's this research experiment. They put people alone in a room with a little machine, and that machine would administer electric shocks. So there was nothing else to do except be alone in that room with this machine. You could be alone with yourself and your thoughts and your emotions and whatever, or you could shock yourself. And over and over and over again, people would do something that harmed themselves and caused them pain rather than just be bored. Because we don't know sometimes, how to be with ourselves. For me, I grew up and the eldest of 7 kids. I lived in a convent where the sisters were always together. The one thing I craved was always to be alone. And that being alone is not, you can find ways, just as Patty was saying now, to enjoy that being alone. But just to say that boredom is a really strong thing and that people will do all kinds of things to avoid being bored. And so choose carefully. Choose carefully. Don't do something that's going to harm you just because it's better than boredom. Think of what are the consequences, as Patty was talking before about the media consumption, this and that, and all those other things. How does it really make me feel? And choose the thing that's going to make you grow and expand and be better, not just not bored.
Thank you. I think that's it. So if you want to
Okay.
move on to the next thing, I will go back
Yeah.
on mute and everything else.
Do we still have time to do a guided practice? How are we on time? Do we have space for this yet?
I think that's fine. Yeah,
Are pe-
go
Are
ahead.
people willing to stay about an extra few minutes to just experience this practice? If you have to leave, please feel free to do so. This will be recorded, but I do invite you to stay and just enjoy this practice. So this is, as we mentioned, that all the emotions on the unpleasant side of the spectrum, including boredom, can be qualified under this umbrella of pain. And so we're going to practice this experience of coming into and being with and recognizing that pain. So I'll invite you to go ahead and find a comfortable position. You can do this seated or lying down. If you do choose to do this lying down, I invite you to place something beneath the knees or beneath the head, just to take pressure off the low back and off the neck. And then if you have it available for you, go ahead and wrap your body in a shawl or place a blanket over you if you have that available. If not, that's okay. I'm just taking any final adjustments that you need to let your body feel as comfortable as you can. And take a nice full breath in through the nose. Pause at the top of the inhale and then just open the mouth. Exhale with a sigh as you soften through the forehead, jaw, and the tongue. Inviting another nice steady breath in through the nose. Pause. And gently opening the mouth, sighing out as you exhale, softening through the shoulders, the upper arms, all the way down to the fingertips. One more like that, nice steady breath in through the nose. Pause. Open the mouth, sigh it out, exhale, soften, and allowing the body to sink into the support beneath you. Allowing the body to feel fully supported as the breath now finds a natural rhythm. Just each breath flowing fluidly one after the other. It's this effortless flow of the breath. Gently softening through the top of the head and all the muscles of the face. And the eyes, letting them sink a little deeper into the sockets. And softening the shoulders, the upper body, the belly. Both legs, both feet. And gently scanning the body from head to toe and toe to head and noticing if there are any areas of pain or tension or discomfort in the body and just bringing your awareness there. So you might say, hello, shoulder, I see you. Thank you for letting me know you're in pain. Thank you, belly. I see you. Thank you for letting me know how you're feeling. Continue to move through the body in this way. And just noticing the emotions that might be present with you. And if it feels welcome and available, placing one hand on the heart and one on the belly. Just holding here. Just bringing into your awareness those emotions that have been present in this past year, these more challenging emotions. Noticing how they feel in the body. And gently repeating the following phrases in your mind toward yourself. This is a moment of pain. Pain is part of the full experience of being human. Others feel this too. I'm not alone. May I be kind to myself in this moment. This is a moment of pain. Pain is part of human experience. I'm not alone. Others feel this too. May I be kind to myself in this moment. This is a moment of pain. Pain is part of the human experience. Others feel this too. I'm not alone. May I be kind to myself in this moment. And gently calling your name to yourself. Calling your name, saying, I'm here for you. I'm learning to take care of you. I love you. Calling your name to yourself. I'm here for you. I'm learning to take care of you. I love you. Calling your name to yourself. I'm here for you. I'm learning to take care of you. I love you. Allowing yourself to receive this message. Feeling into the warmth of your hands on the heart, abdomen. A nice full breath in through the nose. Open the mouth and really sigh. Feeling the body sink into the support beneath you. You gently begin to become aware of the points of contact between your body and the support beneath you. Just bringing your awareness outwards slightly. And if you're lying down, I invite you to roll over to one side. You might even hug the knees into the chest. Just hang out there for a moment. And when you feel ready, using the arm that's closest to the ceiling to press down on the floor in front of the heart and support you as you come back to a seated position. And as we all arrive seated, I want you to bring the palms of your hands together in front of your chest. as though they're in a prayer position, and just rubbing the hands together, generating some heat, letting them get nice and warm. Now, once they're nice and hot, you go ahead and place them on either side of the cheeks or over your closed eyes. Just gently holding. And then from here, you might gently take the fingertips and begin to massage circles, little gentle pressure either into the temples or into the hairline. Now inviting the hands and the muscles of the face and the head to just have a dialogue. Where do the hands want to go? They want to move into the forehead, down into the jaw, or all the way into the scalp. They want to travel towards the back of the neck or underneath the eyes. Do they want pressure or soft strokes or just to hold? You might notice that the mind doesn't need to be involved here, that the body knows what it needs. And when that feels complete, taking one hand to the top of the opposite shoulder and just sweeping in fairly quick strokes down the length of the arm as though you're brushing lint off your shirt. Then do that to the other side. You might even do that to the legs, hips to knees, just kind of brushing them off. And then shaking out the hands as though you're flicking water off your fingertips, shaking things out a little bit. And then finding stillness again. And taking a nice breath in through the nose. And then as you exhale, tuck the chin very slightly to the chest, just a little bit. And pause here and invite a soft grin to form on the lips. Just drawing the corners of the mouth back to the ears. And just a soft grin that welcomes you back here into this body, into this space. And then as you gently open your eyes, allow yourself to simply take in the sight of you sitting here. Okay. And supported. And bringing your eyes back to center. Welcome back. So as you're sitting with that experience, and I'll invite you to, if you feel called to go ahead and type into the chat anything that you feel you want to share, or nothing at all is more than acceptable. I'm just going to share a little bit about what we did, just to give you a sense of what was happening. So those first couple breaths, that inhale, that open mouth, exhale, it just invites us to turn down the dial on the stress response, because that's been on for the last year plus to some degree for all of us. Some really high, but it's been on for all of us to some degree. So we just invited the volume to turn down, invited that parasympathetic nervous system, that peace response in the body to switch on a little bit. And then we took a little bit of time continuing to do that by just softening, inviting the body to soften. And just giving ourselves space to transition, because we often treat our body like a light switch. Like, I just got to go from feeling this to feeling this. I should be stressed to relaxed, and we need a little transition time. So we give ourselves a little bit of space to do that. And we went in and then checked in with the body and let whatever was there be there. Like, oh, there's a pain here, I see you. So remember that what we resist persists, what we recognize releases. So we recognize it. Oh, I see you. All right. It's all right. You're here. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you, belly. Thank you, whatever pain. So that it doesn't feel like it needs to get our attention. We let it know we know it's there. And then we went in and placed our hands here. This hand gesture is something you can do at any time. Placing the hand at the heart and one on the belly. The body receives this as an embrace. We get a boost of oxytocin in the brain, that the neurotransmitter of connection and love and safety. So we give ourselves that when we hold that for about 3 minutes or so. And so we did, we let ourselves be with that. that sense of safety and connection as we then invited these phrases that invite self-compassion. Like, oh, we're owning something's painful. We drew it to a shared humanity. Like, it's part of everything. It's a moment in time, and others feel this too. And then we gave ourselves permission to be kind. So we went with that and let the body absorb that. And then we called our name to ourselves. Because when we do that, our brain goes, yes, and we pay attention in a very different way. Like, oh, you're talking to me. And then we gave ourselves an acknowledgement, like, I'm here for you. Like, oh, wow, I'm here with you. I'm really not alone. I'm here. And I'm learning now at this time how to respond to this body, to this pain. I'm learning how it means we don't have to get it right. We're not going to all the time. That's okay. We get to practice because we love ourselves and you deserve that. So we gave ourselves space to feel. And then we gently brought ourselves back, because again, we're not a light switch. So we brought ourselves back into shared community, and we nurtured ourselves with our own hands. That's that practice of self-massage, just waking ourselves up and reminding us that we're here, that we're okay. Now we let ourselves come back. So that practice is one that the more you practice, the more you'll find yourself responding differently to all of the unpleasant emotions, not just for yourself, but also others. The more compassionate we are with ourselves, the more we are compassionate with other people. It's really quite interesting. It's a natural side effect. We become much more tolerant of the people in our lives when we're more tolerant with and accepting of ourselves. So that is the self-compassion practice. And always remember, whether you're the recipient or the giver, kindness is good for your health. So be kind to yourself, no matter what the emotions are. You get to practice that. You deserve that. This whole last couple of years, we were talking about navigating the pandemic, but no matter what we're experiencing as shared humans on this planet, things are tricky. And our body, our mind, our heart, our emotions, our whole being responds to kindness more than it does bullying. And when we bully ourselves, it doesn't help. So we get to practice. Like, oh, you're angry today. Okay, this is a painful moment. Yep, this is pain. Okay, you have permission. You have permission to feel it all. So thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for this time. Mary, thank you and Judy and Carol, thank you. Any other thoughts? Oh, I felt tears. Yeah, tears are such a beautiful release. Thank you, Diana. Melanie, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I did offer, Carol has handouts that have this meditation available in it, as well as another breathing practice that we didn't quite get to today, but we have another practice that's available to you. And this meditation, a version of this meditation, is on the Insight Timer app. So it's free. All you need to do is download the app, and then you can find it on my profile. It's called the Self-Compassion Break. So you can find that on there.
Great. Thank you so much. This is lots of practical tools here.
Yeah.
Okay.
If there are any questions or anything comes up after about any of the things that I shared or that Mary shared, feel free to reach out. You can find my website, awakenpeacehealing.com. It is on the handouts. Feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to say, hey, sure. Just tell me, like, hey, you were on this thing. I have a question. I'm available.
Find me at maryjohnson.co. No M at the end, just .co.
Right. Or we might run into you writing in a coffee shop in Nashua, as you say on your website.
And it has been known to happen.
Yeah.
And definitely at the library now that everything's open again.
Right.
Be back at the library.
Right. Well, thank you both so much. This is a wonderful evening. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.